Welcome to today's podcast, the final part of our series, What is a Leader? Today, we're looking to the future. We have all the examples history will ever need of what a leader is not running around in today's world. And if we ever want to get any better, we must pause and remember what a leader is. And a real leader is more than just the lesser of two evils, the least shallow of two kiddie pools, the least imbecilic between two out-of-touch ideas, or the least immoral between two monsters. We have to set the bar higher than just one notch above the worst of the worst. We started in the past, remembering what an inspiring leader looks like, as we examined the truly impressive life of Winston Churchill. Then we looked around in the present for anyone with enough integrity to speak the truth from first-hand experience, and found Masab Hassan Yusuf. But as we glance around the desert of young people as regards their potential, and trying to find somebody with a reliable moral compass, is there any hope for the future? If we look at the over-coddled, under-informed idiots like Greta Thunberg, hey, she hasn't been a kid for several years, so she's eligible for an honest critique. Then all hope seems to be lost. Greta decided to show up in Malmö, Sweden, to join the protesters there. We all know this girl lives for a protest, but there's a big difference between protesting for good causes and protesting for downright evil beliefs. If the KKK held a protest, you wouldn't want to join the march with them just because it was a protest, I assume. But apparently I'm giving Greta too much credit. This protest was over the Eurovision contest. It's basically American Idol for Europe. You sing, judges vote, and so does the public. But why would a singing competition need to be protested? Because they allowed an Israeli singer, Eden Golan, who is, at 20, younger than Greta, to compete. Yes, you heard me right. The comp didn't bar Jews from participation. Horrifying, I know. So, obviously, thousands of protesters must get this corrected. And Greta was eager to lend her name and face to the cause, to lead the charge to have this singer expelled. Why? Well, we all know that war councils are really led by the country's pop stars, right? Obviously, any Jew on the planet could simply make a phone call and end the war in Gaza tomorrow. But don't worry, there's nothing ugly under that anti-Semitic thinking, just a deep love of peace. Once again, young people are leading the way, Greta boasted, showing the world how we should react. So, how did they react? Well, the 25% Muslim population of the city gathered into a mob of over 10,000 people to chant, "Sinwar, we will not let you die." This would refer to Yahya Sinwar, planner of the October 7th massacre, currently hiding in the Gaza terrorist tunnels, having abandoned the Palestinian civilians to die, all of whom he could save by surrendering. In these tunnels, he has gathered 15 of the remaining hostages, which he is forcing to be kept around him at all times as human shields. At least 5 of the hostages are Americans, so to borrow a phrase the left is so fond of, say their names. I thought the protesters wanted to save innocent Gazan children who were dying as collateral damage in a war. Isn't that what we keep being told? Guess that's what's known as a Freudian slip. No, according to the protesters, they want to save the animal who had babies burned alive and women gang-raped to death. The world apparently can't afford to lose such a great freedom fighter. And how do we save this irreplaceable monster? Well, that's obvious, by attacking anyone in the crowd who was unable to, quote, prove they weren't Jewish. One such victim was Ynet News reporter Zav Abrahami, who was surrounded by a group dressed as Muslims who demanded to see documents proving he was not an Israeli or Jewish. He told them that he was both Israeli and Jewish and refused to turn over his documents. He was then hit with an object in the back of his head and collapsed to the ground, where he was punched, kicked, and beaten as nearby cops did nothing to intervene. Inside, Eden Galan was booed off stage while rehearsing her song. This young girl was being publicly humiliated in front of the world for the crime of being a Jew. And Greta showed up to help. Not to help this young girl, but to help the victimizers. Eden has required ever higher security to protect her because of the open threats and attempts to harm her, apparently made by those wanting to make an example of what they want to see happen to all Jews. And the violence isn't just being directed at Jews. The Finnish contestant, known as Kahari, the runner-up in the 2023 competition, had an impromptu dance with Eden backstage as they rocked out headbanger style to his song. Then they laughed and clasped hands. Someone videoed and posted this fun, and Nazi style, when you could be arrested and jailed for the crime of kissing a Jew, this type of segregation was extended to include even dancing with a Jew. Kahari was pressured to apologize for his vile crime for treating a Jew as though they qualified as human. And he did. After watching people call out, "Gas the Jews," within hours of October 7th, after the college protesters distributed wristbands to non-Jews on campuses, replacing the idea of mandatory Jewish stars to identify and bar Jews from class, now we have the public shaming of any forbidden interaction with Jews and the violence against Jews that has been excused everywhere. We are well past just similarities to Nazism and well into full-on identical Nazism. And young people are leading the way, as Greta said. Although 80% of all Americans still side firmly with Israel and support the total destruction of Hamas, according to the latest polls. And for the record, I'm one of them. For every idiotic argument from a Michael Moore, there are the frat boys who were provoked by all the nonsensical insanity to defend Old Glory from protesters who were trying to desecrate it. Unfortunately, protesters have succeeded in doing just that to statues of George Washington, Winston Churchill, and the World War I Veterans Memorial. Meanwhile, the protesters' vile beliefs and mind-boggling ignorance at least provide some much-needed laughter during these dark days. From demands for, quote, humanitarian aid for those illegally barricaded on campuses so that they don't, quote, starve. As long as the food provided isn't bagels, because those are Jew donuts, whatever that means. To demanding that the meals include vegan options, because all people on the brink of starvation are known to be picky eaters. Now students on a self-imposed hunger strike have announced that they are angry at the world for the suffering they are enduring as they become, get this, hungry. Yes, when you go on a hunger strike, you get hungry. It's even in the name, hunger strike. We didn't make the rules. What do you want us to do about it? Force feed you? If you're hungry, eat something. Instead, they cry that no one, quote, is taking care of us. At their age, they are way past the point when others should take care of you. It's time to stop coddling and start ignoring. Take care of yourselves. There's food available. Eat it or don't. But enough of the Veruca Saltzes of the world singing, "I want it now," entertaining though it may be. To paraphrase the film, if Greta wants to shout, "I want it now, Mummy! I want the destruction of all the Jews now!" Other than noting that, like Veruca, she would have benefited from a good spanking when she was younger, why is anyone even listening to this? But listening or not, the future of young people like this looks pretty bleak. And with them, the future of the whole world looks pretty bleak. So is there any hope? Maybe. Jeff Sandifer is revolutionizing education. He started Acton School of Business, whose graduates were named the most competitive MBAs in the nation by the Princeton Review. Now, he and his wife Laura have expanded this success over the last 15 years into a K-12 program called Acton Academy. And the results are in. And they are impressive. It's a, quote, cutting-edge program that blends the one-room schoolhouse, the Socratic method, and 21st century technology to aid each student in changing themselves and the world. Jeff Sandifer started out as a highly successful and innovative oil and gas entrepreneur. Then he became a Socratic teacher. He describes the Socratic method as a method of teaching in which you focus on asking questions rather than on giving students the correct answers. They provide real-life scenarios with no right or wrong answers, only successful or ineffective solutions. After being given the information, you are asked to use reason to answer two questions. 1, would you do A or B? And 2, what do you mean by A? This method focuses on helping people define their intentions in specific, solidified terms and decide what to do next and why. Rather than advising people on what to do, they are asked to lay out the problem and what they might see as a solution. Then you examine the reasonableness of those ideas step by step. It's being taught how to reason well, not being given the right answers. It is literally learning how to learn. It's figuring out which ways of thinking lead to the best results for you, and having the faith to use these systems going forward based on their winning records. Sandifer has always valued competence over prestige, though one tends to lead to the other. He values the transformation that occurs during the journey above the goal of the journey, although, again, one usually leads to the other. The ingredients needed for this approach are curiosity and true results. A Socratic teacher's hardest job is to ask sincere questions. They never ask a question they already know the answer to. You reason together while aiming to arrive at the truth. You can't be sincere in searching for the truth if you are putting your thumb on the scales. Most people, including children, have sensitive detectors for insincere BS. If you value your learning, then your pride doesn't get in the way of asking questions to achieve that goal. As Jordan Peterson is fond of saying, you only have to ask a stupid question once, because then you learn the answer. If you don't ask and try to fake it, you remain ignorant. That's why there are no dumb questions, which I would modify to, there are no dumb questions if you're sincere in asking them. It's tempting to pretend you know everything, to bluff your way through life, but the only way to have more than bluffs is to listen more than you speak, to ask more than you answer, to learn more than you teach, or at least learn while you are teaching. Through it all, the goal is to learn a little more than you knew before. Sandifer started his college in 2000 after a split with the college he was working for. Students flooded after him from all over, reveling more in joining his program the more difficult he made it. He joined Navy SEALs, Olympic athletes, and young entrepreneurs to make a brutal 100-hour-a-week, 10-month-long program that changed lives and earned accreditation because of its amazing results. When his two young boys, Charlie and Sam, were ready to leave Montessori school to enter public school, he and his wife were so utterly unsatisfied with their options that they created their own program, and the Acton Academy was born in Austin, Texas. After only 18 months, they were named the most successful elementary school by the Christensen Institute at Harvard. Their researcher and her husband, the CFO of Hawaiian Airlines, were so impressed that they relocated from Hawaii to Austin so that their 5 children could attend. Soon, associates of the school were starting Acton Academies in other cities and even in other countries. Today, they have 300 schools across 26 countries and in 43 states, with 18,000 applications from those wanting to open new locations. All these schools share results with each other to improve and continually evolve the program. Our public school system was modeled on Prussia's, who were the first to establish a public education system. Prussia designed it with the express purpose of producing disciplined, obedient soldiers for the emperor, which makes sense when you live in a world where survival depends on your military. But it may no longer be the best system for modern-day America, where we need innovation from independent and creative thinkers. In the late 1800s, rural people were pouring into the cities because of the Industrial Revolution. While they worked in factories, their children needed to be cared for and educated. The purpose of the public school system, with their straight rows of desks, factory bells, and monotonous hours, was to produce obedient and productive workers who would one day work in the factories like their parents. But if that is no longer the goal, then perhaps it is no longer the right system either. Sandifer and his wife wanted something better for their sons. Other parents took the risk with them, and the first group of 7 students took the plunge. The Acton MBA program, named for Lord Acton, famous for the quote, "Power tends to corrupt, absolute power corrupts absolutely," was becoming well known and reputable, so people were willing to trust this new academy with their kids' future. The school was founded on the central principle that, quote, "Every child who enters our school is a genius who deserves to find a calling that will change the world." Now, that doesn't mean they believe they are all Einsteins with 180 IQs. That isn't reality, however nice it might sound. They believe that everyone has a special talent at something and is therefore capable of making a meaningful contribution to the world. If you're the best plumber around, you'll be happier and making more money than an Ivy League graduate with a meaningless gender studies degree. And your customers won't have to live in knee-deep sewage, so everyone wins. There are multiple forms of talent, not just the high IQ physicist. A child might be the next Steven Spielberg, or Ixaf Perlman, or Elon Musk. Or they might be a revolutionary politician or lawyer, an athlete or farmer, dancer or florist, dentist or podcaster. It's not true that every child can be anything they want to be. It sounds nice, but it isn't true, so what's the point? As a 5'2" disabled woman, I cannot outbox Mike Tyson, even if I wanted to, no matter how hard I worked. Each child can't be anything they want, but each child can be something worthwhile. And in finding that something, you find your purpose, value, and happiness. Acton Academy helps kids find that something rather than reciting empty platitudes at them. The Michaela School, an inner-city school in London, has a 75% acceptance rate to the best universities in the UK. It, unlike Acton, is built on a highly structured system of rapid learning. Both schools are so successful that everyone is taking notice. By taking note of everything that works, we can have a variety of good options, and parents can choose what is right for them and their child. At the Michaela School, the teachers are completely in charge, and the rules are strict. But as a result, the children know how to play the game and are engaged and thriving. Acton teachers provide more guidance than traditional teaching. They offer options, while the students create and evolve the system into something that works. Acton schools form classes, or studios, of 36 kids of varying ages. Once they get going, those kids learn at 2 to 3 times the average speed. The kids are also learning time management, self-governance, and how to negotiate and compromise with others to build a culture that works and is successful for all. The 4, 5, and 6-year-olds work like Montessori schools with combinations of real work routines, like learning to read and write, etc., and free play systems. In elementary studios, they graduate to important real work, and challenging, difficult games that are designed to teach real skills like advanced math. By middle school, you are beginning to tackle real-world situations and beginning apprenticeships by 11 or 12. The children are sincerely told that they have potential and are constantly given archetypes of heroes from history who, like the children themselves, are flawed but who achieved great things. These are the heroes they're given to model. They are also forming societies among themselves. By the time they are in high school, they are better at forming healthy cultures than most college graduates or beyond. This success is a result of making their own choices and being allowed to discover the natural consequences of those choices. If a 5-year-old hits a fellow student, their class of 36, including 8-year-olds, will decide how to handle it. And the older kids have learned from trial and error the downsides of both anarchy and tyranny. Acton's system focuses more on earning credit than on grades. You get credit for the work you accomplish. So the sky becomes the limit depending on how ambitious you are and how willing you are to put in the hard work. Every 6 weeks, there's a public exhibition to show off their work. One exhibition might be diagnosing the health problems of those who attend, who are given cards with symptoms. So you end up learning how to manage and participate in your own health care as an adult. Points are awarded for effort and participation. Badges, on the other hand, are awarded for accomplishment and successes. So both effort and achievement count. And the kids are constantly subjected to peer reviews. Instead of one child telling another that they are stupid, they analyze the problem in specific terms like, when you interrupt me while I have my red flag raised on my desk, meaning I am hard at work, that disrupts my concentration. Please don't do that. So they learn how to treat one another and how to voice what they need from each other. The school uses the corporate idea of 360s, where you are evaluated as a boss by your subordinates, as a colleague by your peers, and as a worker by your superiors to get a comprehensive, unbiased overview of your performance from all sides. You also learn to give and receive valid, constructive criticism. They teach the children to read from comics and magazines so they'll learn to love reading. Then kids naturally graduate to books like Harry Potter, and by 11 or 12, some are reading War and Peace. And not because they're being made to, but because they have a true love for literature. Unlike the public school system, where 1 in 3 are still illiterate in the 8th grade, Acton has a 100% literacy rate. Children earn badges for accomplishments from projects like Deep Books. They have to make a 6-page pitch to their fellow students, arguing why the book they just read is important, explaining how it impacted them, and why they would recommend it to someone else. And you have to do this well enough to convince your classmates, who decide if you have earned a Deep Book badge. The students evaluate each other based on 3 ideas. 1, if this is your first attempt, did you put your heart into your effort? 2, if you've done this before, is this time better than your last attempt? And 3, if you've done it so much that it's hard to compare your previous works to each other, then they compare it to a master of that skill. For example, how does your short story compare to one of Hemingway's? Students are kept from favoring each other through any mutual deals rather than merit by the audit committee. Students volunteer to sit on the committee and do the extra work it requires. Every 6 weeks, they give the class a survey asking whose badges should be audited. The top 3 nominees, plus 3 more chosen at random, are audited by the committee. You don't know if you're being audited because the other kids suspect you, or if you were one of the random audits. If the committee decides your badge wasn't earned, you will lose that badge. But so will the kid who approved it in the first place. Plus, all the badges of both kids will be audited for further corruption. So any quid pro quo arrangement costs all parties and simply isn't worth it. You learn to have integrity about putting your name on something. You are encouraged to be warm-hearted and tough-minded, to be encouraging of each other, but with integrity and justice, to be maternal in your compassion, and protective of meritocracy. The kids learn from each other this way. The ones who are overly tough-minded learn to be warm-hearted as well. And the warm-hearted kids learn that being tough-minded is another part of being loving. But these school societies are no more trouble-free than any society. And those 1 in 100 truly toxic types have to be dealt with before they can tear down the whole system. Sometimes it's a matter of personality. Sometimes it's their family. But this is the only time when the adults step in. They will enforce a transition contract, stating that if the following things don't change, you will need to leave and reapply later. So redemption, when there is change, isn't removed as a possibility. The school tries to utilize information gleaning from the 80-20 rule, which says 20% of your customers produce 80% of your sales, 20% of recording artists sell 80% of the records, etc. The actual rule is the square root of a number of people doing something do half the labor, but the 80-20 rule is more memeable. At Acton, the idea is that there is enough diversity of talent for everyone to be in that 20% at something, contributing and succeeding at something. It's about finding your gift and learning what works in order to succeed. Heroes don't win. They just learn how to get back up. Win, not if, they get knocked down. They teach kids that the 3 monsters they must defeat in order to learn are resistance, distraction, and victimhood. Resistance is often a matter of apprehension, a feeling of being overwhelmed when starting something new. So the answer is to take just the first small step in that direction and keep going. Distraction is a matter of assessing what's most valuable, prioritizing it, and focus. Gratitude is the only cure for victimhood. What is good? What blessings are there? What are your advantages? What is within your control to do something about? Gratitude isn't a naive insistence that the world is a wonderful place where everything is going to go well. Gratitude is the courage to find in even the darkest place some light that can guide you through. It's an action, a practiced habit, not a feeling that randomly descends on you. As Friedrich Nietzsche said, and Nietzsche should be consumed in small, cautious doses, if you think someone has ruined your life, you're right. It's you. Acton doesn't deny that life is unfair. Of course it is. Acton asks you, what are you going to do about it? If you're not willing to do something, then either the injustice isn't that important, or it isn't really affecting you. If an injustice is big enough and impacting you enough, you do something about it. And when that happens, you're not succumbing to victimhood, you're doing something real and productive. The question is, do you care enough to devote your one and only life to this, as opposed to all the other things you could devote it to? Because historically speaking, that's what it's going to take. These kids become adept at knowing when to give someone space to deal with a tough situation, when to offer empathy and encouragement, and recognizing when they're ready for you to help them figure out how to move through it and make it better. Even within these multi-age classes of 36, high schoolers regularly visit the middle school and elementary school groups. Middle schoolers mentor the elementary school groups and go learn from the high school groups, etc. The school functions more like a neighborhood than a traditional school of entirely separate grades. Sometimes you'll even have an extremely gifted 10-year-old selling tutoring services to a high schooler who is struggling in a specific subject. And by the time they're in high school, they've had the advantage of having 6 or 7 apprenticeships. Starting at age 11 or 12, you start choosing your interest, things you're passionate about, and you get some real-world experience to see if this is really something you want to pursue. So if a kid thinks he wants to be a vet, he does some research to find you a local vet who has some accomplishment in the field. Then he writes you an email explaining what he knows about your accomplishments and that he is looking for an apprenticeship, clarifying that he is not asking you to agree to the apprenticeship, only to please give him a 5-minute phone call to explain it. On the phone call, he listens for your hesitations or objections and tries to explain how those issues are handled and asks for a couple minutes in person. Then an impressive 12-year-old shows up, eager to learn, willing to come in early and stay late, willing to work and sweep floors, whatever it takes to learn from you. This kid explains that if he doesn't do all these things, not only can you immediately fire him, but it will be reported to his classmates who will take action to hold him accountable for making the entire program look bad. This system has a 98% success rate at getting kids real-world experience and helping them discover what they love. They don't need to go thousands of dollars into debt while they find themselves in college undergrad programs before even starting down their chosen path. The professionals who agree to these apprenticeships love seeing themselves in these kids and fostering their interest through a generous mentorship in which they look at you like you're the Wizard of Oz. These kids learn how to express themselves, pitch themselves, and to be go-getters, as opposed to kids who are terrified of interactions without an intermediary screen, or have anxiety attacks, real anxiety attacks over making phone calls. They learn to have manners, be professional, charming, and entrepreneurial from childhood. Sandifer's boys got themselves their final apprenticeships at SpaceX, Elon Musk's program, completely on their own with no assistance from adults. It's their accomplishment, not anyone else's. They're independent and have learned how to be successfully self-reliant. This is why the school doesn't talk about the success of their graduates, because they respect that it is the graduate's accomplishment, not the school's to claim. One example of how far ahead of the game these kids are was something Jeff's son Sam said to him when he was asked about how he would advise a soon-to-be first-time father. He said, "When you're young, you just want your parents' attention. And when you're older, what you really want is for them to be a role model that can point the way for you to follow. So to be a good father, all you can do is work on yourself, and that's why it's so hard." He's 19. He already grasps that you love your child in all the ways true love involves, including discipline, structure, not over-coddling them, and you work on yourself to be a good role model. That's how you end up raising healthy kids who become healthy adults. This seems to be proven true, as parents still prove to be the biggest difficulty the school deals with. It's generally not the child, it's the parent, overparenting, smothering, or intervening. They sign a contract not to do this, but it still happens because that's a parent's nature. It's hard for the teachers, too. If they see a studio collapsing or warring cliques tearing it apart, to step back and let them learn requires a lot of self-discipline. The kids either resolve it themselves or eventually ask for help. In the Socratic method, you would ask questions rather than supply answers. So the teacher would ask something akin to, "Okay, if tyranny or anarchy isn't working, do you think you want to try a pure democracy next or a democratic republic?" Then the kids go learn the difference between the two and pick one, while learning why one works and one doesn't, as well as the benefits and drawbacks of each through the real-world outcomes of their classroom. Teachers who can't abide by the guidelines of the Socratic method are removed. They must ask themselves, would you rather be right or would you rather be curious? As Jordan Peterson puts it, quote, "Are there more things that you know or more things that you don't know?" Anyone with any sense knows that no matter how thick the book they've read is, the book of things they haven't read or encountered is way thicker. So then the next question is, would you rather be friends with what you know or friends with what you don't know? And that's, meaning what you don't know, is an infinite landscape. So if you can learn to be friends of what you don't know, and you're really afraid about that, like, no, I need to know here. I might be wrong in my presumption of being right. Then that's part of what opens up the underlying motivation for true Socratic questioning. If I'm talking to my wife, I actually want to know, even though part of me doesn't, why she thinks what I'm doing isn't working. Because it's possible that if I could listen carefully enough, I could find out something stupid that I'm doing and quit doing it. And I would rather stop doing stupid things. because life's hard enough without putting up unnecessary obstacles, end quote. These are the types of discussion that kids are having at Acton. They have a 15-minute Socratic launch in the morning, a 15-minute relaunch after lunch, and a 15-minute close at the end of the school day. They have these Socratic discussions about the issues that are relevant and affecting them 3 times every day, learning to work it out and how, asking, what are the issues specifically? What should we do about them? And why should we choose that solution? These kids are learning not just to be well-educated, not just to be successful entrepreneurs, but also to be successful in negotiating relationships, in marriage and parenting. The school keeps the studios on track primarily by rewards. Rewards for individuals and rewards for studios as a whole. As in life, there are always outcomes. Outcomes of doing well and outcomes of choosing unsuccessful paths. It's like the, quote, competition, for lack of a better word, between religions. Assuming we can all agree that holy wars and forced conversions are bad, as well as worthless, it really is a matter of who can make the most compelling case, the most appealing invitation, and the most admirable followers. Even assignments are just questions to research with no right answers. A group of 5 10-year-olds might be assigned a research paper debating, was JFK the ne'er-do-well son of a rich man, or America's greatest president assassinated in his prime? Assuming the 10-year-olds don't know who JFK was, they just learned that he was rich, he was the president, and he was assassinated. Sounds cool, so they're eager to learn all about him. And it doesn't matter what conclusion they ultimately arrive at about whether he was the son of a rich man or our greatest president, because either way, they just learned all about him. It requires a lot of skill as well as restraint. It's about asking the right question, functioning under certain rules of engagement, and then backing away in order to let something happen that you could never have intentionally created. The kids will start off debating the assigned topic, but before they're done, they'll end up debating what actually makes a great president and what really defines someone's prime of life. They'll end up knowing and discussing all aspects of the Cuban Missile Crisis that will stay with them long after public school kids will have forgotten it all 10 minutes after their structured test. They also learn that critical thinking and debating is insanely fun, as well as intensely interesting and satisfying. A studio might hold a debate game where 1/3 of the kids represent the Loyalists and 1/3 represent the Patriots in the American Revolution, and the remaining third are individually persuaded during the debate to join one group or the other, and the biggest group in the end wins. And you won't necessarily be in the group that mirrors your own beliefs, because critical thinking is about learning to put yourself in the opposing argument, and to be able to argue it well, and thus understand it better. Acton is built on challenging the individual, then the villages collectively, the tribe or studio of 36, the school, be it elementary school, middle school, or high school, and the campus as a whole. All specialize in their strengths and all mix and interact with one another frequently. Inequality isn't solved by attempts to create identical situations. It's solved by having enough diversity that everyone is distributed to the areas where they can truly succeed and be happy. The kids also do what is called stars and stepping stone interviews, where you find people you admire. As an example, for high school students, they would choose someone between their own age and 25, between 25 and 40, and someone over the age of 60. These, quote, interviews typically end up coming down to the same 3 questions in various forms. 1, did they contribute something meaningful? 2, were they a good person? And 3, who did they love and who loved them? Even these questions will mean different things to different students. An 8-year-old may see, am I a good person in terms of black and white? of good and bad morality, whereas an 18-year-old may see it in terms of, am I becoming the person I want to be? By thinking about who their heroes are, they end up asking not only who is successful, but also what is real success? Is it making money? Is it having lots of women want you? Is it being kind? Is it being loved and remembered when you're gone? Many of these high schoolers, called launch padders, since they're in the process of being launched into the real world, are deciding that college is more about prestige than competence. And they care a lot about competence and not much about prestige. If they want to be an engineer and get offered a full ride to MIT, then they take it and go. But should you pay $100,000 for a meaningless degree from a place that no one has ever heard of just because it's the thing to do? Especially if you can go straight to work for Elon Musk, whom everyone knows, and by working for him, it will mean something to anyone you might work for down the line. Why not save yourself the debt and the campus politics? Most graduates score high enough to get into any college they choose, yet 2 in 5 are choosing to go straight into the industries they love after their apprenticeships and join the workforce. They look at college as something that may or may not be necessary, depending on what they want to do in life. With the exception of a few specific fields that require a college degree, going to college is less and less about getting an education and training for a job these days than about leaving home for the first time, having a last hurrah before adulthood, and finding a mate. It's become a very expensive country club that you'll be paying off for years to come. Not really a seat of higher learning anymore. The public school system spends an average of $20,000 to $35,000 per student per year. Many Acton schools cost just $1,000 to $2,500 per student per year. A few do have higher tuition, some as high as $35,000 a year. But if you live in a state where you get school vouchers and can spend them in the school of your choice, you're all set. The rest of us need to get our states to adopt these same voucher systems. The main thing is that Acton is providing alternatives that deliver on results. Sandifer says education is not the same as learning. Education is a product that you provide to someone. Learning is something the student experiences. He recalls a woman coming up to him at one of the exhibitions to reminisce about how it all reminded her of her 8th grade science teacher in Oklahoma City. She talked about how that teacher had changed her life, how much she loved her class and her Socratic teaching style. And when she was done describing how wonderful she was and how much all this reminded her of that teacher, he finished, and her name was Joanna Anderson. She started crying and asked, "How could you possibly know that?" He pointed to his wife, Laura, and said, "Because that's her daughter." Great teachers have an impact that stays with us forever. A love of learning serves us unbelievably well, and it is rewarding for the rest of our lives. So, does the future have some hope of being bright after all? It does if Jeff and Laura Sandifer have anything to say about it. If you're interested in looking into Acton schools, you can find more information at actonacademy.org. They also hold business fairs for children to get their feet wet. There are 1,000 of these held each year across the USA where kids create real businesses and sell things or pitch ideas, and any child can participate. It's financed by Acton, and there are prizes to make it fun. Just go to childrensbusinessfair.org to learn more. Yesterday, we looked at the dark side of today's youth, but also at the bright hope being offered by the promising programs like Acton Academy. We didn't have room to cover the hope to be found in recent headlines, so for those who could use a bit of hope on the political front, there are a few rays of light glimmering. After Biden illegally blocked the aid that Congress approved for Israel, even Democrats in Congress and Hollywood liberals have begun turning on him, which spells doom when liberals reach that point. Jerry Seinfeld spoke at Duke's commencement, where around 30 students made a show of walking out because he's Jewish. But only those 30 left. All the rest stayed and booed them. Meanwhile, Comedian Michael Rappaport, a lifelong Democrat, took to social media to publicly cuss out Biden for his move against Israel and to unendorse him. At Eurovision, the judges snubbed Eden, but the popular vote across Europe placed her second, and she was first by popular vote in all of the following countries: Italy, Britain, Sweden, Spain, Portugal, Germany, France, Finland, Holland, Belgium, and Switzerland. Biden seems to think it's a good strategy to chase the votes of fringe radicals while telling those who feel the economy is bad that they are wrong. On the national news, Nancy Pelosi joined in, saying that too many people care about guns, meaning gun rights, gays, meaning discrimination, and God to know what's good for them. Ah, you sweet talkers, you. Good luck winning people to your side by ignoring them in favor of radicals, and by calling all moderates, people you're supposed to represent, wrong and bigots when they disagree with you. Luckily, Biden is determined to go even further left. But he's already far left on crime, immigration, foreign affairs, and he's losing all the independents over these things. And he still isn't far enough left to get the voters he so desperately wants. The current results in the critical swing states are as follows. Trump is leading in all of them, even when RFK Jr. is factored in. In Nevada, Trump leads by 14, in Arizona by 9, in Georgia by 8, in Pennsylvania by 4, in Wisconsin by 1, and in Michigan by 3. Some of these stats are within the margin of error, but the message is clear and growing clearer. Why is Biden losing right now? It's not because he isn't far enough left to win the radicals. I know. I voted for Biden last time, and I've never voted for Trump before. Now, I know this much. There is basically nothing Biden can do to get my vote by November. I wouldn't trust him not to go back to this insanity for the next 4 years. Who will get my vote? We'll see, but not Biden. If you're a Democrat, you can be mad at me, and all the rest like me, judge and criticize us, which changes nothing, or you can ask why, and what you need to do about it. Others seem to be feeling the same way. Trump and Biden are tied among young voters between the age of 18 and 29, and among Hispanic voters, both of which were 60% plus in Biden's favor last time. That's a lot of votes. That means 10% of each group has turned against Biden so much that they haven't decided to sit it out in despair. They've switched enough to bring themselves to vote for Trump. 20% of black voters have also switched. And the press just keeps staring into the skid, insisting Biden is losing because he needs to move further left. But only 2% of the Democrat base is on the far left, and 16% of their base is moderates. To lose 16% in the hope of gaining 2% is bad math, and he won't get them anyway. Moderate Democrat politicians are openly criticizing Biden since abandoning Israel, and liberal Jews, another big part of the Democrat base, are switching to RFK Jr. or saying they will sit it out and vote for no one. These are votes that went to Biden last time. 87% of Democrats who previously voted for Biden say they don't care about Gaza. 13% think it's important, but only 17% of those support Hamas over Israel. By the stats, Republicans support Israel over Palestine 65-8. And even though the Democrats support Palestine 34-25, most say it's a low priority for them. Young voters are notoriously unreliable. Most will fail to vote even if Biden can swing far enough left for them. But he can't, since only the most extreme of the extremes will satisfy them. They won't vote for him just because he throws them a bone. They're rabid. They won't vote for Trump either, obviously. Most will sit home, and a few will waste their votes on the other two radical third-party candidates so minor they don't have a shot. Obama's Secretary of Defense. So this would be the guy who was Secretary of Defense when Biden was VP. Robert Gates is on the record saying Biden hasn't been right on a single foreign policy issue ever. An assertion that was obviously true, but was made even more glaring as reports broke that Biden is refusing to turn over the location of Sinwar, the October 7th mastermind that Greta was so anxious to save in Rafah, to Israel, so they can target him without killing more civilians, with the targeted weapons Biden is withholding. Does Biden want Israel to drop unreliable weapons at random till they get him? Biden refusing to provide Sinwar's location, which he has, to Israel, even though Hamas is still holding 5 Americans hostage, unless Israel agrees to not finish Hamas in Rafah? If our ally did that to us, if after 9/11 Israel had told us that they knew exactly where bin Laden was, but that they weren't going to tell us unless we gave them more aid, it's all a waste if you only put out 80% of the fire, because the house will burn down in the end. It's not an option. Hamas fired on an aid station outside of Rafah recently, killing several Israeli soldiers. Remember all the fuss over Israel's accidental strike on an aid truck that appeared to be hijacked? This strike was deliberate. They also attacked our boys on that useless pier that Biden insisted we build in Gaza. And new video shows Hamas shooting Palestinian civilians to steal their aid. Israel's kill rate is almost 1-to-1. 14,000 terrorists to 16,000 civilians, which is the best rate ever in urban warfare for any nation since history started recording these things. Hamas used international aid, meaning our hard-earned tax dollars, to build 300 miles of terror tunnels in Gaza. There were only 11 miles of tunnels at Iwo Jima. There are only 113 miles of tunnels in London's entire metro system. And they built 300 miles of tunnels. When we fought the Japanese in Manila, we killed 100,000 civilians in order to kill 17,000 enemy combatants who were holding 1,000 hostages. So Israel is doing almost 6 times better than we did. There has been an update regarding these stats since I published this article. The UN just admitted to exaggerating Palestinian casualty numbers by 1/3. This brings Israel's casualty ratio from an already record-setting 1-to-1 terrorist to civilian kill ratio to an even better 1.5 terrorists killed for every 1 civilian. This accomplishment has cost them around 300 soldiers who would not otherwise have been lost. The Manila comparison previously given would now be equal to Israel killing those 17,000 enemies while killing 11,334 civilians, as opposed to the 100,000 civilians we did kill there. That makes Israel's ratio not almost 6 times better than ours, but nearly 10 times better than ours. I'm not the first to point out that it's all one big cartoon time warp from 2014. You remember the one where John Kerry is trying to play intermediary between Benjamin Netanyahu and a Hamas leader who is using a baby that he's strapped with dynamite as a human shield and holding out a list of demands that reads, "Death to all Jews"? And John Kerry is asking Netanyahu, could you at least meet him halfway? And when John Kerry was president, oh wait, didn't work out for him, did it? Hey, it's a long way to November, and people's memories are frighteningly short. So let's hope that Biden keeps pulling hard to the left and getting lost on every Air Force One staircase. Because the stats are showing it isn't going to work out well for him either at this rate. Daylight is beginning to glimmer. Thank you for listening, and please tune in for next week's podcast.